Okay, getting back to memory, I'd like to...
I'm not going to give you any more context. Let's just get straight to names.
Well, for memory.
For memorizing names. Well, the thing about names is a lot of them don't make sense. Now, if you think of Mr. Smith, you can see his face, and then you can see somebody hitting him on the head with one of those, you know, the metal smith, whatever you call him, like hitting. You see him, and somebody's hitting him on the head with a what do you call those things that metal?
Frying pan.
Well, yeah, I can't remember. But what does Mr. Smith remind you of if you had to see Mr. Smith? If Allison, let's just see, because techniques only work if you make them up yourself. So, is there somebody in history, Mr. Smith, that rings a bell?
Mr. Smith. I'm trying to remember who I knew that was called Smith. I went to high school at Sarah Smith. That was the name of my grammar school.
Okay, Sarah Smith. Okay, well, if you see somebody and you couldn't come up with anything better, that would be fine. You could just say, wow, that person went to Sarah Smith's school as well, but I didn't know it. And it's a synthetic sort of relationship.
So you're associating. In other words, your whole point is you got to associate.
Yes, association.
So in other words, when you meet somebody, it's important that you have another thought that is related to that person's name.
Yes, because those are mental hooks. Those are hooks that are going to remind you, and the more hooks that you associate with what you're trying to remember, the easier it's going to be to recall that fact later, because they're basically hooks. So when I
think I'm going to start doing that, because I don't do that.
Well,
and I do have trouble memorizing names. So in other words, when I meet somebody, I'll think of their name and I'll think, what can I associate their name with?
Well, that's fine.
You gotta actually program your brain to think another thought then when you meet somebody.
Yeah, but what about Mr. Bentivania?
All right, well, Mr. Bent. Well, I'll look at him. I'll say, I wonder if his mind is bent.
Well, okay.
What else would be bent? Maybe he's got a bent.
What is this? A bent? For me, Mr. Bentivania, a bent weather vane. So I just see him with a bent weather vane stuck out of his head, and then I remember.
So the more outrageous, the better,
right?
Yeah,
the more outrageous, and the secret is to make a little visual picture of what you're trying to remember, and use humor. For instance.
Well, this is like mind control. You're controlling your own mind, right? To think thoughts.
What a concept! You mean we can control our minds? Well,
I thought
never
they
thought
just
of
had
that
thoughts.
before, but. Yeah, actually my mind, I need to grab it by the scruff of its neck very often because it tends to run away with me. But let's just go back to medical terms. Belly button. Omphalos. How are you going to... okay, here's what I can come up with right now. My arm fell loose. Omphalos. It fell off and fell into my belly button. Now, you don't have to tell everybody how you remember, okay? Because that's kind of outrageous.
They'll think we're nuts.
Okay, let's go back to another easier name. So what memory experts do? They come up with standards. Like, Mr. John. If you think of the John, do you think of a toilet? So you're going to see him with a toilet stuck in his head, so next time you see him, you start laughing, and he's going to say... Why? He's going to say, why are you laughing? He says, oh, because you got a toilet stuck on your head. Then he's going to think you're crazy and you're not going to get the business. But, I'm just taking it to the extreme because that's what makes it work, is when you do synthetic things.
Well, that's interesting. That's a very interesting concept. So basically, what you do is when I meet somebody, I'm supposed to think a thought. I have to force myself to think another thought that is involving their name.
That sounds like, okay. They break it up into syllables, like the phonetics, break it up into syllables.
I have to imagine,
because sometimes they're just one syllable and they're easy. Like Mr. Give me an easy name. Brown.
Roberts.
Like Tom Brown, my roommate.
Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Brown. Okay, Mr. Brown has a brown car. He really does. And so.
And you see the car. You see him driving the car.
Right.
You see him in a brown car?
So what the problem is, if somebody's really large and you think of an elephant, then be careful that you don't get it mixed up, because they say, hello, Mrs. Smitherdine, hi, elephant. And that would be very cruel and embarrassing, but it probably wouldn't happen because, so use the face.
You already gave the example of the John, so.
John, I gave you the John with the guy was.
Even though you keep your private thoughts private.
Yeah, you just keep these little mnemonics. They're just memory devices that we use. It's just like when you go to the gym. Everybody knows that they can do push-ups. Maybe they live in a gated community, a jail, and then all they've got is their cell, and then they come out with these big muscles because they're doing push-ups and stuff. But the truth is, if you have devices like, workout machines, you can focus, and you can use devices and become, very sharp and good at this stuff. So when you read...
What do the workout machines have to do with the memory?
Well, they're devices, they're devices, they're techniques, and they can focus on certain applications and just like you have certain muscles that you can focus on with different machines.
Oh, so in other words, our techniques are like machines.
Well, your techniques are like machines, but they are like machines. Not exactly the same, but they're devices, okay? Now, like for running, you got a treadmill, so you don't have to run as far. But let's getting back to names. Getting back to Mr. Bentivania. Once again, you have to break the word up into syllables and then come up with a representative picture, and then associate that with the person's face. Because if the person's got a red shirt on, and you say, "Oh, that's Mrs. Red Bull. She's driving the." You had to remember red. You associated red because she's wearing red, and then her name was actually Fountain, Joe Fountain. So you picture, oh, this person is Red Fountain because she was wearing a red. So you see red water coming out the fountain. But the trouble with that is she might be wearing a different colored dress next time you meet her, and then you'll be confused. So that's why the experts use faces. And as I said, you can make a whole career out of this, and that's what I've been doing lately. But
it shows.
It shows. Yeah, don't quit your day job, Mike. But anyway, Mike. How can you remember I'm Mike? Well, I'm always talking in the microphone. Or I'm Microsoft certified. I don't know, but whatever works for you. The problem is when you're creating these synthetic little mnemonics, what it's doing, it's forcing you to pay attention. And that, many times you never really heard the person's name, and then you try to remember it later. But what else you can do with this is just ask them. Just say the name a few times while you're talking to them, and ask them, like, where does that name come from? Yes.
Get 1 minute left.
Okay, we've got 1 more minute. Okay, so any questions? Let's just finish off this name session.
Okay,
with,
so basically the bottom line, when you want to remember a name, you make yourself use mind control to think a thought. Right, and the thought has to be
I'd say it's
a thought that has to do that associates their name with their face.
Yeah, or yeah. To keep it simple, yes.
Okay, that's good enough. Until next time, it's Mike saying.
Remember.
Bye.